committee meeting. I'll wait until everyone takes their seat.
I think they're still in the back.
Okay. Before we move to the next items, I would like to thank Controller Yee for her correspondence regarding inadequate oversight of executive compensation and Treasurer Chung for his correspondence regarding investment with retailers who sell assault weapons. Our investment team will address each of these topics, but I wanted to provide an update to set the stage for this important dialogue we will have today. On the matter of executive compensation, new language has been drafted within our governance and sustainability principles to address the issues raised by the controller. Regarding Treasurer Chung's request, staff identified 5 retailers that fit the parameters and have engaged with all 5. Through these efforts, meaningful exchange and change and progress has been made. It's a strong example of how CalPERS can use our size and influence to make a real impact through our engagement efforts. Again, I will have, I will leave it to our investment team members to provide details. But I wanted to make sure we started this item by acknowledging and thanking both the controller and the treasurer. This agenda item has several parts, but I'm going to ask our investment team to present their work on retailers that sell guns and assault weapons, and then I want to see if there are questions from our board members, and then I will call on our state treasurer for comments. Following the treasurer's remarks, we will take public comment on this topic and then complete the remainder of the item. And when I call for public comments, we're going to clear the bench here, and all those individuals that are sitting in designated spaces, I'm going to ask you to just come up and fill this row as we go forward. And so we don't have to introduce every person. You will be asked to introduce yourself by giving your name and your association. And each of you will have 3 minutes, and there's a timer right below my name here that will help guide you in terms of your public comments and remarks. So with that, we can now start. Mr. Eliopoulos, you can begin.
Great, terrific. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is item 6B, our review of our 5-year strategic plan. I covered most of the introduction in my other remarks, and I know we have many members to speak, so I'm going to skip over a more thorough introduction into the piece and really immediately hand it over to Ann to start with the substance of the report.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ted. Ann Simpson, CalPERS Sustainable Investments Program. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on this engagement. It's an extremely important issue for CalPERS. As our presentation shows, in 2013, the board directed CalPERS investment staff to divest from 2 manufacturers of assault-style weapons that are illegal for sale in California. And in the wake of the Las Vegas shooting and tragedies, the treasurer wrote to staff and to the board asking for us to look at our exposure to companies which sell such weapons to the public. CalPERS has a total fund investment policy on divestment, which actually highlights the responsibility we have as owners of these companies to engage them in order to have issues of concern to be addressed. The first step for us, using our resources through our ICOR team, was to identify companies which may be within the scope of the Treasurer's letter. We looked at online retailers and identified that, for example, Amazon, eBay, and others actually have written and public policies that their boards have taken a view that this type of product will not be available to the public. So we focused our attention on the high street retailers, and we've given you the details that we had at the time of writing the report. We wrote shortly after the receipt of the Treasurer's letter to those 5 companies that we'd identified, and our intention was to hold the boards accountable. I think this is our appropriate role as the share owners of these companies. We asked the companies to carry out a review of both the revenues which are associated with the sale of weapons banned for sale to the public in California, and to consider the risks to the company which are associated in the light of the tragedies as they were at the time of Las Vegas. Since then, we've had further horror to review with the Florida shootings. And I'm glad to say that each of the companies we approached indeed did have a board review, and 2 of them were able to assure us that the board had already taken a decision to not continue to sell these types of weapons, but also so-called bump stocks and other accessories that accelerate the ability of such weapons to wreak havoc when misused. And 2 companies announced at the time of our engagement with them that they would be taking new steps, and that was Dick's Sporting Goods. And I think what was interesting in this is that the companies were not just responding to what we asked for, but in more than one case going further. There's a final company which we hadn't spoken to at the time of writing the report, that's Sportsman's Warehouse. In terms of taking our request for a review seriously, I can report that in the conversation, the company provided the chair of the board, the CEO, and the CFO to have the conversation with us. They did undertake a review and came to the conclusion that the company would not alter its policy. I would be happy to answer any questions on this important and sensitive topic, but if there are no questions, I'd be glad to hand over to Ted to address the next point, which was raised at our last board meeting, which is to consider the pros and cons of divestment. Thank you.
Okay, we have one question, Ms. Simpson. Hold on. Ms. Taylor?
Yes, it's not really a question. I just wanted to lift up Ann's team's work on this and the engagement that you have done. And as I mentioned earlier, I think engagement's an extremely important process that we use. And I'm just wowed by the results. I know that some of it has come on the heels of other things, but I'm seeing here in the results that in 2016 we had, what was it, sporting, where'd it go? Yeah, Big 5 Sporting Goods, through our engagement, had done some work already, and Walmart had discontinued some of this, the sale of assault weapons in 2015. And I just want to thank you all for the engagement that you've done over the years as well as currently on this. So again, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Mather?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Ms. Simpson, and your whole team. You know, as a mother of 2 school-aged children, the issue of gun violence, particularly in our schools, you know, hits me right in the heart. And I am, you know, so moved and heartened by the student activism that has arisen following the horrific and tragic shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And of course, there have been many voices raised even before that. The compelling words and actions of the Parkland students in particular has sparked a movement across this country and has elevated, I think, the public conversation regarding the safety of our nation's children. Momentum around this issue has also driven consumer pressure around the sale of firearms, as well as public policy conversations in many jurisdictions across this country. And that is why I'm particularly proud of the efforts of our investment team, headed, and in this case headed by Ann Simpson, that our team has undertaken to engage these 5 largest retailers of firearms. And through that engagement, as you so well articulated, we have supported the students' efforts and the efforts of those who are advocating against gun violence in this country, providing the investor voice regarding how this issue is a real business issue. And I think that is a key part of this conversation. And as a result, partly, I think, in response to our engagement efforts, 4 of these 5 retailers have identified it as such, as a real business risk, and have made significant policy changes along 4 key dimensions, as you are identified. The discontinued sale of assault weapons, if they sold them at all. The discontinued sale of high-capacity magazines. The discontinued sale of accessories like bump stocks. The raising of the age to acquire firearms and ammunition from 18 to 21. All really important, I think, progress. And in the case, as you noted, of Dick's Sporting Goods, they've also announced that they will be more active in the public policy debate around firearms. And so I just wanted to really, credit our team for your really important efforts on this issue that obviously is a visceral human issue, but also a truly relevant investment issue, and that our engagement efforts is the right approach to really getting to change on this issue. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sid. At this time, I'd like to call on the treasurer, Mr. Chung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Jones, and investment committee members. Just over a month ago, on February 14th, a disturbed former student armed with an AR-15 assault rifle was dropped off by an Uber driver at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. It was 2:19 p.m., near dismissal time. He proceeded to Building 12, an instructional facility containing 30 classrooms. At 2:21 p.m., he pulled a fire alarm to sow confusion and then began firing at students and teachers. From the moment the first round was fired to the time he dropped his rifle and left the scene by blending in with fleeing students, a mere 6 minutes had passed. But it was an eternity for the approximately 900 students and 30 teachers in Building 12 who were desperately fleeing the 3-story structure, trying to find cover, clinging to life, saying their last goodbyes. Most Americans are shocked and deeply saddened by the massacre that killed 17 innocent kids and teachers and injured 17 more. But shock and remorse provide little consolation to the families who had to bury a child, a sibling, a spouse, or a loved one. If thoughts and prayers could be converted into currency, our pension fund's $139 billion unfunded liability would have been zeroed out long ago. When will bold action replace the hollow platitudes? Let me remind this board that just in the first 2 months and 2 weeks of this year, there have been 46 mass shootings, killing 73 and wounding another 181. There have been 14 shootings that have occurred on school grounds since the year began. The time for empty promises of never again are over. The time for reckless lawmakers who promise fidelity to their constituents but remain wholly owned subsidiaries of the NRA are over. If Congress and state houses are unwilling or unable to deliver real change, then it is up to us to take the fight to borrowing from the notorious banker Willie Sutton to where the money is. I call upon the nation's largest institutional investors, BlackRock, Fidelity, Vanguard, Alliant, Allstate, PIMCO, State Farm, and yes, CalPERS and CalSTRS, to use the power of their purse strings to prevent more of the schools, workplaces, and places of worship from becoming killing fields. We have a responsibility now to do what needs to be done, to be responsible public servants, to be responsible investors, to be responsible citizens in a nation besieged by gun violence unknown to any of the other world's developed countries. In 2013, this board responsibly reacted to the shootings at Sandy Hook Elementary School by divesting from companies that manufacture firearm and ammunitions that are illegal in California. Now I urge you to go further. I respectfully call upon this board to divest its holdings of wholesale or retail sellers of these banned weapons. Neither taxpayer funds nor the pension contributions of any of the public servants we represent should be invested in the purveyors of banned military-style assault weapons. This includes bump stocks, slide fire devices, and other accessories that can accelerate a semi-automatic rifle's rate of fire. These relatively easy to buy and inexpensive aftermarket products allow semi-automatic weapons to simulate automatic fire. A rifle that may normally fire at a rate of 45 to 60 rounds per minute can now be altered to release a torrent of devastation at 400 to 800 rounds per minute. The deadly efficiency of these senseless products was on display at a Las Vegas outdoor concert last October when 58 were killed and more than 546 wounded in the span of 10 short minutes. According to the ATF, 12 bump stocks were found on weapons recovered from the murderer's hotel room. Pension funds like those managed by CalPERS and CalSTRS exist to provide for the economic security and prosperity of our teachers, social workers, first responders, and other public servants. It makes no sense to pour taxpayer and pension fund members' dollars into products that are not only illegal to possess or sell in this state, but are snuffing out the lives of some of the very real people we call our beneficiaries. Divestment in such companies would be faithful to CalPERS' existing investment policy and uphold the board's fiduciary responsibilities to its members. I remind this board that current policy allows us to take harmful external factors into account when determining the overall return of an investment. External factors include such things as reputational injury that could cause the stock value of a company to fall, costly litigation, as well as increased regulation and new laws that could restrict sales. Does anyone here really actually believe that banned military-grade assault weapons are not covered by these factors? Even red states like Florida are beginning to heed the public's call to end gun violence. Some of our country's largest companies, including Dick's Sporting Goods and Delta Airlines, are disassociating themselves from the toxicity of the NRA and its golden calf assault weapons. Tell me that our fiduciary standard of care requires us to own the futures in bump stocks when the Trump at White House plans to circumvent Congress and ban them through regulation. As the Irish statesman and philosopher Edmund Burke once wrote, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for the good people to do nothing. It's been 169 days since thoughts and prayers were first expressed in the wake of the Las Vegas Mandalay Bay massacre. 645 days since the Orlando Pulse nightclub shootings. 838 since San Bernardino. 1,006 since Charleston, South Carolina. 1,921 since Sandy Hook. 3,990 since Virginia Tech. 6,908 since Columbine. It's time. It's time for the good people, who I am proud to call my colleagues and friends on this board, to do more. If we don't do this, we'll be going against the tide of history. I respectfully ask you to agendize my proposal for a vote at the next scheduled meeting of this board. And Ann, thank you very much for the work that you're doing.
Okay, thank you. And so the next step is to hear from public speakers. So I'm going to ask staff to vacate the bench. And I would invite the speakers to come in and take seats along the front at the bench here. And as you complete your comments, if you would move back to your other seat so additional members can come up and be prepared to make their comments. And as I mentioned before, each speaker will have 3 minutes, and the timer is right in front of me here. And state your name and your association or organization, and then you can begin to speak. And once you begin to speak, the clock will start, and it will advise you as how much time you have left. Okay, so in order to have some continuity, we'll just start at this end, and we'll to my left and your right, and then we'll just move this way. And then as you complete your comments, if you will vacate that seat so the next person can just automatically be prepared, and we'll keep going. So, sir, you want to begin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name is Robert Velasco. I am a retired lieutenant with the California Highway Patrol, and for 27 years, I proudly served the people of this great state of California in various assignments throughout the southern part of the state. I have been a CalPERS member since September of 1988. That's when I began my career at the CHP Academy, not too far from here. Yvette, the youngest of my daughters, was only 5 months old when I entered the academy, and her life paralleled my career with the CHP. You see, because she was brutally murdered 2 weeks and 1 day after my first day of retirement. On December 2nd, 2015, my precious daughter Yvette was one of the 14 victims and 14 innocent and defenseless victims killed in the San Bernardino terrorist attack. Yvette was attending a work-related training day and holiday event at the Inland Regional Center when she and her co-workers were slaughtered by 2 heavily armed, heartless terrorist monsters wielding semi-automatic assault rifles equipped with high-capacity magazines. The rounds from these weapons are designed to tear and destroy tissue inside the human body, causing maximum deadly tissue damage. And that is exactly what they did to the inside of my baby daughter, who was shot 3 times. I am haunted by the terror, the thought of the terror that she must have felt at that time. The cowardly killers preyed on my beautiful daughter and her co-workers using weapons designed for war, not for sport, not for hunting, not for personal protection. They are designed for one thing and one thing only, for killing as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. These same types of weapons were also used by the killers in Sandy Hook, Orlando, Las Vegas, Sutherland Springs, Parkland, Florida, and they were all purchased legally. And each time these mass shootings occur, my family and I are heartbroken, reliving that horrific day of December 2nd, 2015, because we know the pain and overwhelming heartache that the families of the victims are experiencing. I am here before you today as a citizen of this great country, as a retired law enforcement officer, a CalPERS member, but most importantly, as a grieving father of Yvette Velasco, whose loving memory and spirit will live inside of me and her mother for eternity. I respectfully request and plead with you to support, as I do, Treasurer John Chung's proposal of not investing CalPERS funds in companies involved in the production and/or sale of military-style assault weapons that are banned in the state of California. I realize much needs to be done to prevent mass killings in our country, but we need to start somewhere. Your vote to divest California pension funds from these companies will encourage other institutional investors to do the same. It will send a powerful message to Washington and state politicians who are unwilling to take action to prevent mass killings in our country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Akila Jones. This isn't my story. My life is relatively comfortable and untouched by tragedy, but it could be mine. It could be any of ours. A youth appears in a school. It's Valentine's Day. The youth begins stalking students with an AR-15. An AR-15 is a military-style assault rifle. It fires 45 rounds per minute. The woman's husband does not flee with the students. He heads towards the shooting and is gunned down. Here is his widow's letter to you. My name is Deborah Hickson. I'm the wife of Christopher Hickson. He was killed in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting on February 14, 2018. Everyone wants to know what they can do for me. Here's what I need from you, the people of the United States, the politicians of the United States, and the big institutional investors of the United States. I need you to ban the sale, manufacturing, and use of any weapons that are lightweight, magazine-fed, gas-operated, air-cooled, shoulder-fired, and capable of semi-automatic fire, such as the AR-15. I would also like you to ban rifles with pistol grips and barrels with a length of 16 inches or less. And I need you to stop taking the public's money and investing it in the companies that are selling these weapons. Most people in America are in agreement with this request. Those that are not say that it is an infringement on their constitutional right as per the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment states, quote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed," end quote. Why does everyone skip the first three words, quote, "a well-regulated," end quote? Our society has changed, and these weapons are not being used to ensure the security of a free state. They are being used to gun down innocent people for no reason. Please, stop this insanity and work towards getting these weapons banned. Citizens of the United States, you can vote for legislators that will work for us and make new laws that will get these weapons off the streets. If your legislators, both state and federal, are not doing what you ask, vote them out. Politicians of the United States, you can work together to make laws that will ensure that everyone in the U.S. is safe from this kind of violence. Ban these weapons. Institutional investors, stop putting your money into the companies that sell these guns. Since many of these weapons are already banned in California, you may be asking, what can you as pension board members do? You can support Treasurer John Chung's call to divest from retail or wholesale sellers of these weapons. You can use your financial clout to put pressure on the makers and sellers of these military-style assault weapons and support the National Gun Violence Safety Movement. This isn't a political issue. It's about what's right and wrong. These weapons have no purpose in our society and they must be removed. Once we can do this, then you will have done all that you can do for me, and maybe my family and I will find some peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I just wanted to say thank you for hearing us, first of all. My name's Renee Wetzel. My husband, Mike Wetzel, was murdered in the December 2nd terrorist attack in San Bernardino. He was my best friend. He was my favorite person in the whole world. I would have rather spent time with him than anyone. And he's gone. The people that murdered him and 13 others that day used assault rifles that fired hundreds of bullets in the few minutes they were in that room. They're extremely destructive, and the add-ons that you can add to these guns make them even more destructive. They're designed to kill. If it had been any other type of gun, he might have lived. The bullets that these guns shot are designed to tear through bodies and destroy organs and leave no survivors behind. his strong body that could spin our kids in circles and do crazy gymnastic stunts with them was totally destroyed. His life and so many others before and after December 2nd have been taken because there's been no change. This is not a political issue. These guns are designed to kill, and there's no need for these type of guns to be in the hands of the public. Sadly, a majority of lawmakers in this country don't react to seeing the faces of the victims. They don't care that people are being murdered at school, at work, at church, at the movies, at a nightclub. They just offer their thoughts and prayers, which isn't helping to solve the problem that this country has. The only thing that seems to cause any change is money. We have to hit them where it will hurt them the most, and by doing so, make them realize that we, the families, the people that care, are demanding change. We will not sit back and allow the mass shootings to continue to occur without any recourse. I would like to urge you to refrain from allocating the investments of CalPERS and CalSTRS to benefit the wholesale or retail sellers of the military-style assault weapons and other add-on devices, such as bump stocks, large-capacity magazines, that can accelerate the semi-automatic weapon's rate of fire to be like an automatic weapon. Divestment in these companies that sell these weapons and accessories will send a clear message that the thoughts and prayers that are sent when these tragedies occur are not enough, that the state of California is demanding change. Don't let my husband's death be in vain. Let us use his memory to make a change. Let California say no more. When are people's lives going to be more important than the right to own a gun?
Okay, thank you. Sir? Sir, are you not going to speak?
We're going to go this way, if you don't mind. If you don't mind.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a coordinated speech. Hello, my name is Natalie Heim. Thank you for having us here. I'm here as a Marjory Stoneman Douglas alumni, and I'm joined by my fellow alumni who will focus on our specific support of the Treasurers Initiative. But I would like to take this opportunity to remember why I have come before you today. For the past 2 years, I have been a Los Angeles resident, but not long before that, I was a student at Stoneman Douglas, graduating with the class of 2012. Parkland, Florida was where I grew up. Parkland, Florida was a place that no one had ever heard of when they asked me where I'm from. Parkland was named the safest town in the state until February 14th, 2018. On that date, Parkland, Florida became a national headline. On that date, Marjory Stoneman Douglas became the site of one of the worst school shootings in American history. 17 people shot in a school in my quaint little town. 17 people at the hands of an assault rifle. Why is it so easy for an 18-year-old to get an assault rifle? Why? We all know why, and it's not because of the Second Amendment. We all know who and what controls our gun laws in America. It's a sad and horrific truth that we have let money overshadow common sense. It is a shameful and incoherent blemish on our society. When the generations look back and bear witness to the extent of this country's denial, greed, and inaction, which has led to the murder of thousands of lives, who will be to blame? We are all culpable until we do our part in creating change. Since the tragedy, I've been astounded, not only by the bravery displayed by the Parkland students, but also by the mobilization of my entire community. The day of the shooting, 3 MSD alumni started a Facebook group called Mobilizing MSD Alumni. That night, 500 joined. By the next day, we had 1,500. Today, we are a group of over 11,000 alumni from over 25 regions who have organized under structured leadership to support the students' demand for action. I have since assumed a position as a regional leader for the California group, activating about 180 alumni across this state alone. As California residents, we are in a privileged position because our gun laws are ahead of the curve. But with that position and with that privilege, we can and we must do more. This tragedy has left me devastated, terrified, shocked, and heartbroken. but I can't cry at my desk and move on with my life like I have in the past. I'm so sorry it took this happening to my high school and my friends and my family for me to feel so passionately. I'm angry at myself for not taking action sooner. So I hope my presence at this meeting signals that I've heard the cries of the MSD students from 3,000 miles away, and that we, as MSD alumni, will fight for our beloved hometown, for this town, and for every town in America. Today, we are urging you to help this cause in the way that you actually can. Change can be in your hands. Let's start at the root of the problem. Let's start here, and please, let's start now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Kim Meyer. I'm a graduate of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School with the class of 2008. Today, I'm a lawyer practicing civil litigation in Los Angeles. In 2013, in response to the tragedy at Sandy Hook, this board divested from manufacturers of firearms and ammunition that are banned in the state of California. And we applaud that measure. But events like the Sandy Hook shooting continue to happen, and they are happening increasingly often and with increasingly high death tolls. In fact, 5 of the 10 deadliest shootings in modern American history have occurred since Sandy Hook. San Bernardino, Orlando, Las Vegas, Sutherland Springs, and now in our hometown of Parkland. Gun violence also continues to impact communities throughout the country every single day, with the Gun Violence Archive reporting 15,549 non-suicide gun-related deaths just in 2017 alone. With some of the strongest laws in the country, California is a national leader in gun violence prevention. But it's clear that we as a nation have a long way to go. And until all state and national representatives are willing to pass meaningful legislation to reduce gun violence, it is up to us. Individuals and institutions need to send the message that we will no longer accept living in a country where the price of freedom is 15,000 lives a year. So we, as alumni of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and as California citizens, ask you to honor the codified values of this state and help us change this dangerous trajectory. Don't wait until it happens in your hometown. Don't wait until it happens in your community. Don't wait until it happens to your friends or your family or your loved ones. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Matthew Woolman, class of 2002, resident of Southern California for 10 years. I work in wealth management as a financial advisor. My clients are generally retail folks, teachers, firefighters, doctors, business owners, lawyers, even a municipal judge, and a lot of them have funds with you guys. Today, board members, you have the opportunity to invoke monumental change by rectifying a long-lasting, lingering hypocrisy. The failure of public funds to represent our values as Californians. Public policies instituted in the state of California are reflective of our state's values. The continued ownership of publicly traded companies within these portfolios that sell weapons that are banned under California statutes undermines our values and our democracy. The weapon used in the Stoneman Douglas shooting, the shooting that has devastated our high school, our community, and my personal faith in democracy in and of itself, which is serving the public good, was an AR-15. CalPERS, the retirement fund for teachers in the state of California, have a portion of their retirement assets in companies that sell AR-15s. In essence, CalPERS has funded the sale of a weapon in some form or fashion that was used to kill students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, San Bernardino, Las Vegas, the list goes on and on. Does this at all sound hypocritical? The hypocrisy ends today. I understand the board's position. You're investing as a fiduciary on behalf of thousands of employees, past and present, managing aggregately over $500 billion, and there's a great deal of risk when it comes to misallocation of funds. The gun industry has been historically profitable, but the notion that investing in the gun industry today, that profit is now a fallacy. Gentleman was talking about systemic risk earlier from the Wilshire Group, and Systemic risk is generally something that you cannot diversify away from and you cannot control. This is not systemic risk, folks. The writing is on the wall, and it is in English. If we can't read it as a forward-thinking group of board members, then I don't understand where the disconnect is. It's an industry that has been profitable as a result of failing to implement common sense gun legislation, and unfortunately allowing mentally unstable individuals, including the 18-year-old who legally purchased an assault rifle that managed to kill 17 in 6 minutes at my high school. I'm glad to say times are changing. Gun manufacturers are rebranding because people are beginning to demand change, and there's a number of catalysts for that reason. Smith & Wesson, for 160 years, was called Smith & Wesson. They're now called American Outdoor Brands. Is it because they just started selling fishing poles and tents? No, they understand the stigma and what hurts and what's negative about the connotation of being a gun company, especially a publicly traded gun company. So the good news is, since November of 16, when they changed their name, and I know that they're not selling the guns, they're making them, and you guys have divested from them, as it's my understanding, the shares are down 64% in a year and a half. People are voicing their opinions via social media. They now have a voice. And as a result, I really think that, you know, we're turning the corner. Florida passed its first gun legislation in 20 years. City of Miami ran the most successful gun buyback program. Attitudes are changing, and the outcry is growing. More changes to come, and your current investments, if there are any still in that portfolio, are at risk as well. We all know that you are forward-thinking individuals who have the ability.
Wrap up, sir? Could you
Absolutely.
Wrap up?
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. My name's Shane Fetterman. I've been a California resident for 12 years, but I grew up in Parkland. I went to Stoneman Douglas and graduated 20 years ago in '98. My entire family still lives there, but I'm here today to continue the points that myself and my fellow alumni here are trying to make clear. For me, it really comes down to accountability. I'm accountable for making sure my voice is heard, making ethical decisions when I vote and in my life, to give back to my community and encourage others to do the same things. So about accountability. Columbine, 99, Virginia Tech, 07, Sandy Hook, 2012. And not just places of education, things like movie theaters. Aurora, Colorado with an AR-15, 58 wounded, 12 killed, parking lots in Las Vegas, 58 dead, 851 injured. Nightclubs, Pulse, 49 dead, 58 wounded. I know everyone knows these statistics, but I'm saying them again and again and again, because we didn't do enough then. We can now. We all heard these events happening on the news. We didn't do enough. The adults haven't done enough. Cameron Kasky, one of the Stoneman Douglas leaders of Never Again, said, "We're losing our lives while the adults are playing around." He is right. Well, I'm done playing around. Yes, I should have marched in '99 after Columbine. Yes, I should have been more aggressive about who I voted into office after Pulse. I should have been talking to parents at Moms Demand Action meetings, middle school kids and high school kids about being agents of change back then, but I'm doing it now. I've seen the desperate tears of moms who are scared to drop their kids off at school. I've asked rooms full of kids to raise their hands if they feel unsafe in school, and every single one raises their hand. This is not okay. And I hold myself and every adult in this room and in this nation accountability for what we do next. We know, you know. Make the ethical choice. Divest from anything that has to do with these weapons of war. They're destroying our kids, our nation. Set an example for the rest of the country. Stand behind this movement for a safer nation. Be on the right side of history. And please, do the right thing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if the four of you could allow the next group to come up to these seats, please. And then we'll start back over at the left, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you sitting here and having the courage to sit here and listen to all of us. And I do appreciate that very much. My name is Trina Mines, and I'm the widow of Damian Mines, killed in the terrorist attack in San Bernardino. And I collect widow's benefits from PERS, CalPERS. I'm sorry, if you can't hear me, I apologize. So I'm coming to you because I heard just now that you're talking about ethical decision makings regarding your investments. I work for the Diocese of San Bernardino. I'm on the lay pension board at the Diocese of San Bernardino, and we have done our due diligence in investing in things that go along with our beliefs. I think we can do that here. Are we making a ton of money? We're not. However, we're doing the right thing and we're doing the ethical thing. I'm coming to you now because there's just a couple things. I don't know whether you know some of the details of the shooting in San Bernardino. You can look it up in the FBI report. You're talking about 24 shots in 8 seconds from an AR-15. We're talking about, by the time you figure out something is happening, it's already done. My husband was shot 5 times, and the bullets ricocheted throughout his body. Then when they went to go ahead and capture the people that did this, there's a shootout. Here's the amount. The SWAT team and the police shot 400 rounds. The perpetrators shot 80. These are trained individuals that know how to go ahead and get bad guys. And because of the tactical gears and other things that they had, they couldn't bring 2 individuals down in less than 400 rounds. So I'm asking you right now, the NRA is sitting here telling you, go ahead, arm the teachers, arm this, arm that. All they're doing, they used to be responsible for responsible gun ownership. But now all they're doing is putting the responsibility and the liability on everybody else, and the money on everybody else but them. Because of PLACA laws, we can't even touch them. All right? So I'm asking you very much, please, to listen to Mr. Chung and to go ahead and vote for his proposal. My daughters and I went to Washington, D.C. afterwards 3 times and talked to our legislators, and they did nothing but give us our thoughts and prayers. They listened to us, but there was no action taken. I'm asking you, please, to have the courage to do what our leaders do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, young lady.
Hello, my name is Tina Mines. I'm here today to show support for Treasurer Chung's urging to divest holdings from companies that sell assault weapons and their accessories. I'm the daughter of Damian Mines, who, as my mom stated, was killed in the terrorist attack in San Bernardino on December 2nd, 2015. A little bit about my dad. He was amazing, as most dads are. He was incredibly intelligent. He was hilarious. He was tolerant, compassionate, and kind. He was a good man, an astounding husband of 36 years to my mother. He was an amazing dad and my best friend. As my mom said, he was shot 5 times, and according to the autopsy report, he died in less than a minute. He had no chance. The gun used during his shooting was a military-style assault weapon attained through a straw purchase. This weapon and weapons like that one are modeled after the weapons our military uses. They are quite literally weapons of war, designed with every attention to detail to make them as lethal and efficient as possible. Their very conception, their design, is to kill people. The rapid-fire capability of these weapons leaves little recourse to those targeted by them. When people are ambushed, they have little time to react or do anything at all. And though I know a great deal of people who own these weapons have no intention of harming others, there's plenty of evidence that shows that these types of weapons are increasingly being used in mass shootings and in terrorist attacks, specifically incidents of domestic terrorism. In fact, though historically explosives have been used in the majority of terrorist and lone wolf attacks on U.S. soil, since 9/11, most attacks involve firearms. A 2015 SPLC report found that of the 61 incidents that were studied between 2009 and 2015, 59% used firearms, and another 5% used firearms and explosives. In a book called Preventing Lone Wolf Terrorism, some CT approaches discussed, the authors found that the most concrete clue concerning lone wolf operators and their tactics is their modus operandi. In recent cases of shooting sprees, including high school shootings and mall shootings, all perpetrators were male and all had license to possess semi-automatic firearms. Also, lone wolf attacks typically kill more people in the United States than these types of acts in other countries, and it may be attributable to easier access to high-capacity weapons. Consistent with the relaxation of U.S. gun laws since the 1990s and the recent trend in mass shootings, the lone wolf's preferred weaponry is now a staggering range of high-velocity firearms. The ease of access to guns and ammunition in this country is well known, with al-Qaeda member Adam Gaddan encouraging supporters in a widely available video from 2011 that was shown on YouTube to take advantage of the lax restrictions on gun and firearm ownership here and carry out attacks using firearms. Additionally, attacks by firearms are deadlier, and deaths by a firearm in the commission of a lone wolf attack are more prevalent than deaths by explosives. The United States also leads the world in mass shootings. Again, one factor that contributes to this is the availability and accessibility of firearms. The overall levels of violence have decreased, mass shootings have gone up, according to a 2015 study by the Harvard School of Public Health performed before the San Bernardino shootings, before Charleston, before Orlando, before Las Vegas, before Parkland. According to that study, the rate of mass shootings in the United States has tripled since 2011. They define mass shootings as public attacks in which the shooter and victim were generally unknown to each other and 4 or more people were killed. At that time, in the previous 29 years, mass shootings occurred on average every 200 days, and during the past 3 years, there were 14 shootings occurring on average every 64 days. And I suspect current research would support this acceleration as well. Gun violence, for lack of a better descriptor, is not limited to people with unsavory business dealings. It hurts us all. And I just want everyone to understand that we have a problem and that we need action to change it, and change can be here today. As a society where we put and spend our money speaks to our values, and I'm asking you to value human life, and please divest. Thank you.
Sir.
Good morning. My name is Jason Perez. I represent the men and women of the Corona Police Officers Association. I also sit on the board of Corona Life Services, which is a faith-based crisis pregnancy center. I'm also an endowment member of the NRA. And I see some of the faces, the dumbfounded faces. Why would I be bringing this stuff up? Because it has nothing to do with having the fund healthy. The things I do outside of work or outside of my official capacity have nothing to do with the way you guys should operate and sustain the fund. While I'm not trying to take away the losses and the pain that you felt, I can't imagine. Some people said that this is not political. Mr. Chung, you made it political by bringing these folks here. This is nothing more than a political ploy for you and your run for being a governor for this state. You have said before in this auditorium that it is against CalPERS policy to divest. Yet here you are introducing or strongly encouraging the board to divest. Whether you land on one side of the case or the other has nothing to do with CalPERS and its fiduciary responsibility to invest to maximize returns for the sustainability and the health of the fund, the retirees, and the current members. And for that matter, for the entire state, because they're all taxpayers, we're all paying into this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Madam, your turn.
My name's Suzanne Verge. I'm got to collect myself. My father was the registrar at Santa Monica College for 40 years, and we collect his pension and long-term care with CalSTRS because he was in the teachers, and I have family that does CalPERS with the nursing. I can't imagine the money the profits that you guys are making are the weapons that killed my brother. So I will collect myself. People talk about statistics. My brother is not a statistic. He was 18 years old, murdered 1 mile from our house by UC Berkeley, Bolt Law School graduate, member of the California State Bar. He wasn't a criminal until he killed my brother. I was 15 and a half. I know how these Parkland kids feel. Crying so hard that you think your heart's gonna break and you hope it does so you can have it just end. I've been doing this for 18 years. My brother died 40 years ago. I'm a member of a club that no one wants to belong to, and yet our membership keeps growing. There's more and more of us. I got involved with this with the Million Mom March when there was a shooting at the North Valley Jewish Community Center where a racist with an assault weapon went in there to kill Jewish people. And he shot 2 children, and luckily they lived. Then he left and went and killed a postal worker because he was Asian. I went to the march, and then I ended up driving a pink RV that said "Halt the Assault" in 2004 because I wanted to renew the assault weapon ban. My kids were 8 and they were 13. They stayed home, and while that summer I took that time to drive across. I should have been on vacation with my family. Instead, we go to Sacramento, we go to Washington, D.C. Next week, my daughter goes to school at the University of Miami, 1 hour south of Parkland. There are many students who lost loved ones at MSD. And now my daughter texts me and says, "Mom, we gotta march again." And that's what I'm doing, and it's not right. As a society, we are paying too high of a price for the gun retailers and gun wholesalers' profits. I urge you to choose life and divest over bloody, bloody profits.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Genevieve Tovar. My sister Yvette Velasco was murdered along with 13 others during the San Bernardino mass shooting on December 2nd, 2015. One of her coworkers and his wife stormed into a holiday gathering with AR-15s and opened fire. Because of the legally obtained weapons they use, they were able to brutally injure and kill a large amount of unsuspecting, innocent people. Before she was killed, Yvette, my sisters, and I were all very close. We spoke every day and spent much of our most valuable time together. Needless to say, we were an integral part of each other's lives. Yvette has 6 nieces and nephews, all of whom she has lived with at some point in their lives. She babysat often, and in fact, Yvette was like a second mother to my oldest nephew, whose biological father has been absent a great deal of his life. She was the go-to person in our family when anyone wanted an honest and loving opinion. She always had the best interests at heart for those she loved. Yvette was never afraid to do what she believed was right. She worked hard to accomplish her goals, and her hard work was about to pay off. That December 2nd, when she was supposed to receive her registered environmental health specialist badge. When I think about that day, I can't help but consider her size. Yvette stood 5 foot 1 inch tall. She weighed no more than 100 pounds and was not even big enough to donate blood. To imagine that she was shot several times with such a damaging weapon is traumatic in itself. It is one thing to never have my sister again, but it is another thing to know she was murdered in such a violent, destructive manner. I read an article in the New York Times in which military doctors described the damage AR-15 bullets can do. They described the wounds from those weapons as being as if a bomb had gone off, and that the exit wounds were up to 1 foot wide. To think that weapons like this were also used in the murdering of children in places like Newtown and in Parkland is unfathomable. Having to try to explain to my children what happened to their auntie has been inconclusive. They still talk about their Auntie Yvette often. Many times they ask questions that I don't know how to answer. Questions like, why did someone want to kill Auntie? Why can't I see her anymore? But the most baffling question of all, Mommy, why do they let the bad guys have the guns? My answer to that is, I don't know. Because I don't know what person with a conscience would allow these war weapons to be so easily attainable. The type of weapons intended for military use that are capable of maiming as many people as possible in a short span of time. So I'll ask you, in the wake of this epidemic of mass shootings caused so easily by people with assault rifles, will you continue to let the bad guys have the guns? I hope and pray that your answer is no, and that you grant Treasurer John Chung's request to divest of all investments in companies involved in the selling and wholesaling of assault rifles.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, members of the board. Before I proceed with my statement, I would like to ask each one of you to take a moment to think of the 5 people you love and cherish the most in this entire world. Imagine that one of them is brutally murdered this morning, and you return to your respective lives after this meeting to pure hell and devastation, traumatic grief, as you learned your loved one was murdered by an AR-15. Members of the board, this hell on earth happened to me and my family on December 2nd, 2015. My name is Erica Porteous, and my baby sister, Yvette Velasco, was one of 14 innocent people killed in the largest terrorist attack at the time on U.S. soil. This is a picture of my beautiful sister. I'm passing that around. That's a picture of Yvette. She was a college graduate that would soon pursue her master's in environmental health sciences. She was a lover of nature and mankind, always seeking to understand different perspectives and cultures. She was driven and passionate about the work she was doing as an environmental health specialist. She wanted to influence the world for the greater good. The past 2 years have been the hardest years of my life. I've learned that our family is experiencing a different type of grief. Not the type of grief that you experience because your loved one died of sickness or disease or even a freak accident. My sister was purposely murdered in a manner reserved for military warfare. My parents, sisters, and I struggle daily proceeding in life without Yvette. Even Yvette's nephews have entered into therapy to help their little minds cope with the fact that they won't see their auntie again. I will never see Yvette accomplish her dreams or play with our children as she once did. I will not see her marry or have children of her own. She would have turned 30 a few weeks from now on April 3rd. It saddens me to no end that not only did she die at the hands of military weapons, but innocent people, including children, continue to die because these weapons are so readily available to the public. Yvette was a quiet and private person, but she was the type of woman that would not stay quiet if she saw injustice or wrongdoing. It is because of her that I stand before you today to ask for you to withdraw investments in all wholesale and retail distributors of military-style weapons like the ones that killed my sister. Yvette was brutally killed. After she was brutally killed, my family and I have tried to find ways to influence change within ourselves and gradually spanning outside of our greater circles of influence. We know that change will not happen overnight. It occurs by way of many cumulative decisions. One of those decisions is in your circle of influence. I echo the treasurer's stance that there is no place for these types of weapons in the hands of general public. Absolutely none. I urge you to think of Yvette and the fact that she could have been your sister, your daughter, your granddaughter, or your niece. You have the ability to influence change, and I am pleading for you to use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you, Board. My name is Arlen Verdeo. My wife was Benetta Bedell. She was one of the 14 killed in San Bernardino. I'm a member of CalPERS. I've been a police officer for school districts, college districts for over 25 years. I protect lives, children, K through 12, college now. I do anything to protect them, but I couldn't protect my wife. And on that day, by a gun battle of rifles, I know most people, most officers, CalPERS, CalSTRS, they want the best investment for their retirements. I'm about to retire in a couple of years. I'm hoping to get a best investment myself. But if I could save a life from gun violence because of from you guys, I'll do it. There's no amount of money on human life. And I beg you guys, and I thank you, Treasurer, for allowing me to be here to say from myself and my family, do anything possible to put a dent in gun violence and reduce guns in the hand of wrong people. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to start back over here, and if the three of you can allow the next group to come forward, that would be helpful. And ma'am, you can start now.
Hi, hi all. Thank you for allowing me to come here and to share some problems, just to make change and support John Chang. My name is Hewitt. I am a wife of Isaac Amanus, which he lost his life in December 2nd, San Bernardino. Yeah. Why I'm coming to explain this, just I don't want any family to feel what I am passing through, just to protect for the future's family. The tragic day of Isaac got killed remains in the family members, especially my children and me. Ever since I have been grieving, my children too are having difficulty time finding. It's very hard to overcome their loving father's ultimately death. My children were outstanding students, but because of loss of their dad, they couldn't make it. They are struggling. All of us are struggling, morally, spiritually, and physically, because we lost him. And the little different mind, I can say, we choose to live in America because we believe America is the safest place, but we lost the main one. The father of the house, we lost him, and everything goes devastated. I'm a registered nurse working in the county, San Bernardino. I tried my best to be strong, to help my kids, and to help myself, but still struggling. And now I'm here to support John Chang because I don't want any family to be like what I'm going through. Please, it's in your hand to support American people to live in safe. Safety is priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hi, my name is Joe Morgan. I should probably start off, I am a teacher. I stand in front of a classroom at a junior college 3 times a week. I've had to stand in front of a classroom of junior high kids and explain and talk to them about school shootings. This is real to me. The school that I teach at has been targeted twice for school shootings. One time by the San Bernardino shooters. I live in Corona, so I get it. I'll probably be out there Saturday marching with the people. I appreciate the efforts. I believe in the efforts, but the fact is divestment doesn't work. This is not a role that this board should be doing. You face significant reputational risk by divesting. It's not listed on your pros and cons, but this costs you every time you do it in terms of reputation. CalPERS has become essentially kind of a wish basket for everybody to put their dreams and desires in to make a better world. And there's a limit to the power that you have, and there's a limit to the ability of the tax-paying public to absorb these kind of activities. Your main purpose is to get a return. I appreciate a lot of the efforts that you've put forth to try to maintain sustainable investments. A lot of them make a lot of sense, but your own paper right here says divestment doesn't work. You're better off being in the game than being out of the game. And look, I live in Corona. None of the shootings that have been listed here says that these people bought this stuff at Walmart or Dick's or Big Five. They were bought at mom and pop places. And there's no corporate entities that sell bump stocks. And those are going to be banned by the feds pretty soon, and probably by the state. And this is like a red herring. This really has been made entirely too political. There's no purpose for this hearing other than politics. There's got to be a limit, and you've got to see at the end of the day, this is costing you credibility, just in terms of the job that you do. I know that overall you do a good job, but this costs you every time you do this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Dr. Bill Durston, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm Dr. Bill Durston. I am a former expert marksman in the U.S. Marines, a Vietnam combat vet, and a retired ER doc. And I'm here to speak on behalf of Americans Against Gun Violence and Sacramento Chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility in strong support of Treasurer Chung's divestment proposal. We also commend the board on your prior divestment after the Sandy Hook massacre. Contrary to what the prior speaker said, that was a very important move that you took. It was followed in California by the adoption of laws to close some of the loopholes in our assault weapons ban. Obviously, it didn't stop the shameful epidemic of gun violence in our country. We still have the horrific mass shootings. On an average day in the United States, more than 100 people are killed by guns. Some by guns that have been of the type you divested from the manufacturer of, but are still available in California as a result of grandfather clauses. Most by guns that are still legal for sale in California, and mainly handguns, which confer no net protective value. Treasurer Chung's divestment proposal is another important step, small step, but an important step in the right direction. Of course, we acknowledge it's not going to bring rates of gun violence in the United States down to rates in other high-income democratic countries, in which, on average, the rate of gun-related deaths for the overall populations is 10 times lower than the United States. For high school-age students, 82 times lower than in the United States. If we're going to lower our rates of gun violence to levels comparable to other high-income democratic societies, we have to adopt comparable, stringent gun control regulations. These include stringent restrictions, if not complete bans, on civilian ownership of handguns and all semi-automatic and automatic rifles. Senator Thomas Dodd of Connecticut called for such regulations in 1968 after the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. Since 1968, more U.S. civilians have been killed by guns than all the U.S. soldiers killed in all the wars in which our country has ever been involved. As Treasurer Chung has implied, you don't need to wait for a new president, a new Congress, a new governor, a new state legislature before you can make divestment decisions. And you certainly don't need to wait for a reversal of the NRA's rewrite of the Second Amendment endorsed in the Rogue Heller decision in 2008, which essentially eliminated the term a well-regulated militia from the United States Constitution. If you adopt Treasurer Chung's current proposal, you'll send a ripple across the country. If you adopt divestment from all businesses involved in the manufacture of all automatic and semi-automatic rifles and all handguns, you will create a tidal wave that could completely change the parameters of the gun control debate in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam?
Thank you. My name is Rosemary Yoshikawa, and I'm here to represent Moms Demand Action, a national organization that works with legislators on all levels, state, federal. We work with corporations and schools to enact common sense gun reforms. We are here to support Treasurer Chung's request to divest holdings from companies that manufacture and sell banned weapons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, board members. My name is Lori Safian. I am president of Women Against Gun Violence, and I am here today to speak in support of Treasurer Chung's divestiture proposal. The law of California is clear, and the voters of California, and no doubt many of the employees this fund represents, resoundingly agree that assault weapons, high-capacity magazines, and their accessories have no place on our streets. By taking a strong stand with the sellers of these weapons designed to kill as many people as possible, as rapidly as possible, you not only uphold the spirit of the law, but you set an example for the rest of the country. The tide is shifting. We've heard it this morning, toward a boldness and outspokenness to reject the myths perpetrated by the gun lobby, manufacturers, and retailers. Treasurer Chung's proposal and his call for institutional investors across the country to similarly divest offers this board the opportunity to lead that tide again, just as you did 5 years ago when you divested from manufacturers. In Women Against Gun Violence's 25 years, we have been proud to stand with California as it has blazed a trail, taking the strongest actions in the nation to protect its citizens from gun violence. I want to close with excerpts from an essay recently written by Alec Foster. He's now a college junior. He was just 10 months old, strapped in his car seat, when his 7-year-old brother, Evan, was murdered sitting next to him by an assault weapon. His mother, Rhonda, had taken Evan to the park to pick up his soccer trophy, and their car was caught in crossfire. Alec wrote this 5 days before Parkland. This is Alec. It is rather difficult to accurately describe how heartbreaking it is for me to say that I don't remember my brother, but that is the reality I live with. I'm angry that my brother's life was taken from me. I long to know what it would have been like to grow up with him right beside me. It infuriates me that someone ripped him away from me without my having any say with the firing of a deadly gun. But what really shakes me to my core is that these assault rifles are legal to possess and fairly easily accessible to the common person. Enough is enough. I do not want another human being to have to go through what I and my family have had to go through. I do not want to see another innocent child on the news that has been gunned down at the hands of an assault rifle. I do not want another community to have to grieve and feel unsafe going to church or going to school or going to the movies or going to concert. For Alec, for Evan, for all of the children and adults whose lives have been taken, their stories we heard this morning, and for all who look to us to protect them, I urge you to take this important divestiture stand. Thank you, Treasurer Chung, for your leadership on this issue. It is not political, it is humane, and it is the right thing. And thank you, board members, for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, CalPERS Board. Chairman Jones, thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Elizabeth Leslie, and I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of California. As many of you may know, the League has been around offering good public policy for almost 100 years. We've been fighting for 3 decades for common sense gun control. Today, we are here to offer our support enthusiastically for the proposal from Treasurer Chung to divest from companies that deal in weapons that are illegal to own or sell in California. It is clear that the proliferation of handguns and semi-automatic assault weapons is a major health and safety threat to all of us. The League supports strong measures to limit the accessibility and regulate the ownership of these weapons by private citizens. We believe that divestments and boycotts such as this one make an important public statement and serve to change public policy. We strongly urge the board to support this proposal and ensure that CalPERS retirement money is not invested in companies that sell or promote banned weapons. The time is now for you to make your legacy, to take every action to stop the violent slaughter of Americans by assault weapons. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Janine Firpo. I'm a native Californian and a recently retired international business executive. I'm here because I know that it's possible to achieve financial returns and social returns at the same time. And I know this because I have been personally and professionally involved in the impact investing space for over 10 years. And because you are leaders in the ESG space, I think you know this as well. And I plan to refute the claims that divestment doesn't work. And I think the people who don't understand socially responsible investing are on the wrong side of future trends in this country and around the world. Gun violence in this country has become an absolute epidemic. It is now the 3rd largest killer of children in the United States. I'm also speaking for my husband, who is a 20-year veteran in the public school system. He has personally been in numerous drills and at least one school lockdown because of fears of guns on campus. Our students, our teachers, and the public should not have to live like this. Mass killings should not become the new normal. The issue that we're discussing today is about more than financial returns. It's actually about our values. And we know that 65 to 75% of Americans in this country want stricter gun laws, yet we can't get our government to act. People in this country want to see change, and one mechanism that has been effective in other campaigns is divestment. Examples include the movement against apartheid in the 1980s, and we've seen more recent departures from fossil fuel companies that are having an impact. While divestment is not the sole driver of change, it is an important tool, and importantly, it allows people to align their money with their values. Divestment and socially responsible investing do not mean giving up returns. A recent report that analyzed 2,200 studies over a 40-year period concluded that the business case for social screening was empirically well-founded. And just last year, Morningstar found that their sustainable fund group is actually performing better than the overall fund universe. So the argument that divestment will result in reduced gains is not necessarily true, and it's definitely not true in the long term. What's more, increasing numbers of people in this country are demanding opportunities to align their money with their values. 84% of women, 81% of young men want to invest in sustainable investing. And we're seeing 22% of total assets under management in this country are now in ESG principles. You are administering the money of 1.6 million former and current public employees in California. They have the right, including my husband, to make a decision about where their money is invested. And the fact that so many people in this country want to do something with gun laws suggests that investment in the gun industry is going against the values of the very people that you're representing. We also know that values-based investment does not mean that you have to give up your fiduciary responsibility. As investors of the people's money, you hold an increasing duty to not only meet their financial objectives, but also their social concerns. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Back over.
Donna Snodgrass, Director of Health Benefits, Public Employees Retirement System. RPEA concurs with the report by staff to not divest in the companies engaged in lawful activities. They shouldn't be excluded from the CalPERS portfolio. Working on engagement on controversial company boards and stockholder meetings to redirect the company toward good corporate behavior, in our opinion, would be a better idea. Proactive participation in corporate affairs is more likely to produce positive results within the controversial businesses, specifically in the case of guns. The first priority and responsibility of each and every board member here is the health of the Public Employee Retirement Fund. At the last official report was 68% funded. That's a low number. If a motion to divest is passed, I would like to know if the treasurer is prepared to make contributions to the fund in the same amount that is lost in investment revenue. According to the report in the package today, that's almost $1 billion of divestiture. There's no P in ESG. P being political. Using this fund for political purposes is wrong. Now, the victims that are here today speaking and their survivors went through hell. There is no doubt about that. And I sincerely hope that each and every one of them are receiving the follow-up care that they deserve. But I will point out to you today that the entire system failed the children on February 14th. The entire system. In other words, Mr. Chung, good people stood by and did nothing leading up to that incident. Thank you.
Next.
Chairman Jones, board members, my name is George Lynn. I am the president of the Retired Public Employees Association, and I'm going to be much briefer than my colleague Donna was. One of my concerns is this item is about ESG strategy. And, you know, I hear all of the things about one item, but I don't hear about ESG in particular. You know, quoting from the Governance and Sustainability Principles on page 4, CalPERS expects all internal and external managers of CalPERS Capital to integrate the principles into investment decision-making, including proxy voting, consistent with fiduciary responsibility to seek the highest possible returns. at an acceptable level. Now, in my view, that doesn't exclude ESG. But when I read Ms. Simpson's section on this item, nowhere did I find the comments, return on investment has priority. In my opinion, as a member of CalPERS, as a retired member, we need to focus on return on investment. If ESG fits into the picture, hey, that's a winner. But I think that we have not focused on return on investment based on what I've heard. And also quoting from some of her information in her item, it says that divestiture may generate media attention for the issue. Oh, wow, that's good. Let's have some media attention. But when you go on down to the cons for divestiture, the item that hits me right between the eyes is divesting appears to almost invariably harm investment performance. So what are we all about? You know, I also have looked at the article in the November CalPERS announcements, and we invested in a wind farm, and that's great. But what's the return on investment? I know that we have solar, we have other kinds of investments that are ESG. What's the return on investment? Are those returns getting the perf to jump up, or is it just stationary?
Okay, thank you. Next.
Good morning, Board. Samir Santi, Unite Here Local 11, the Hospitality Workers Union in Los Angeles. On behalf of our union, I want to first express our deep admiration for and gratitude towards all the speakers who have shown such strength and conviction this morning. I also want to commend Treasurer Chung for his leadership on this really defining issue of our times. Union Hotel members at the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas witnessed firsthand the unthinkable horrors that result from the unregulated sale of military-style firearms. And given the distressing political climate in Washington, we all know that we can't expect any action from the federal government. So it's incumbent upon states like California and institutional investors like CalPERS to lead on this issue. We applaud the past leadership by CalPERS on this. The board and staff has done a lot to address this epidemic, and we encourage you to take this important next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hello, good afternoon, CalPERS Board. My name is Dennis Rawls. I'm the president of the Corona Supervisors Association. I represent 40 of the middle management of the city of Corona. I've been in CalPERS for almost 20 years now, and I kind of want to talk about this very emotional topic. As a father of 2 sons, elementary school sons, having to have conversations about gun violence, it's hard. I personally have had friends who were in the building at San Bernardino. I've had friends who were at the concert at Las Vegas. Some of them had their hats shut off. Their family had to lay down and were saved by another off-duty officer. Another friend still suffers from PSD. And when I heard about the Florida shootings, you know, and hearing these folks speak today, my heart weighs heavy with those. But despite that, this isn't public money. This is our money. You know, we are investing to make sure that our future and my kids' future continues on, so that they have the opportunities to continue to hopefully take on a cause like this and fight for what they believe in. I would challenge you, rather than divest from companies that do business like this, use your influence and your power to fight back. Get them, speak to them, get to them to change their ways if that's what needs to be done. Use your power and your influence that way. Don't run away from the fight. Double down. Hit them head on and challenge them to change their ways if that's the will of the people. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Phil Jonas. I'm a member of the Peace Officers Research Association of California, PORAC, Board of Directors. PORAC represents over 70,000 California law enforcement officers, nearly 50,000 of whom are CalPERS members. Recently, the American Council for Capital Formation warned that CalPERS has, quote, demonstrated a troubling pattern of investments in social and political causes that are truly jeopardizing the retirement fund. Pension funds are entrusted to treat fiduciary responsibility above all in deciding stocks to invest. As Andy Kessler wrote last week in the Wall Street Journal, if you don't like where your returns are, someone else will. If CalPERS recklessly invests with social responsibility as the top priority, CalPERS will suffer and society will be left unchanged as the divested stocks will be quickly bought up on the secondary market by other investors. CalPERS executives are the agents of the owners of CalPERS, in other words, the members. You have a direct responsibility to the members, and that responsibility is to manage the investments in accordance with their desires. A recent survey found that focusing on maximizing returns and returning the fund to 100% funded status was supported by 74% of CalPERS members. Only a small percentage supported investing in projects that supported political or social causes or divestment schemes. As a person, you may have many other responsibilities that you recognize or assume voluntarily to your family, your conscience, your community. You may feel impelled by these responsibilities to devote part of your income to causes you regard as worthy, or to refuse to work for or invest in particular corporations, such as gun retailers. We may refer to some of these responsibilities as social responsibilities, but in these respects, you are acting as a principal, not an agent. You are spending your own money or time or energy, not the money of your employers. If these are social responsibilities, they are your social responsibilities as individuals, not that of CalPERS. Profits are the best measure of CalPERS value to members, to taxpayers, and to society. P.T. Barnum famously said, "There's a sucker born every minute." Many of them go into so-called socially responsible investing, but the basic idea is to throw money away. For this board to push their view of social responsibility is simply to force CalPERS members and taxpayers to contribute against their will to social causes favored by activists. In short, do whatever you want with your money. However, as pension managers, you are not investing your money. You are gambling with the financial future of retirees and public employees. This runs contrary to your fiduciary responsibility as pension managers. Public pensions are a right earned by state and municipal workers and retirees who have devoted much of their lives to protecting and serving the public. They should not be used as policy experiments or be part of some agenda to affect social change. Regardless, divestment from gun retailers will have no effect upon the frequency or lethality of mass shooting events. And this is because mass murder is among the most premeditated of crimes. A determined murderer will not be deterred by gun laws. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The list that I have from the public in terms of the request to speak, there are about 5 additional individuals on this list that have not spoken. So if you're in the audience, you have the right now to come forward to speak. And if you were not on the list, I'm going to ask if there's anyone else who would like to speak at this time. Okay, we have one. So again, indicate your name and organization, and you have 3 minutes. Proceed.
So my name is Steve Silverstein. I'm just a citizen here, although as a citizen I serve on a pension board in Marin County. I just wanted to urge the board to consider a more activist proxy voting strategy. We talked earlier today about the risk of drawdowns, frauds in corporations that we invest in, sexual harassment and so on, which detracts from the value of our investments. When there are women and minorities on the boards of these corporations, there is less such risk. There have been numerous academic studies to that effect. Some pension funds, in particular Massachusetts and Rhode Island, have a policy of voting against re-electing to the corporate board the members of the board nominating committee unless the board has 30% women and minorities. That's a very simple voting strategy to de-risk the portfolio. and I would suggest that CalPERS consider doing that. The second thing is the executive compensation, as we all know, has gone out of control. The average corporations puts about 10,000 words in its proxy statement with some convoluted scheme to show how the CEO deserves another $5 or $10 million this year, and so on. CalPERS, unfortunately, approves a great many of these excessive CEO compensation packages, which detracts from the returns, because when the CEO is taking more and more money for himself, there's less money for the shareholders. So there's some pension funds. Minnesota, for example, votes against 60% of the CEO pay packages in the S&P 500 companies. Florida votes against 40%. The Alberta pension fund votes against 80%, and some European funds vote against 90%. And I would suggest that CalPERS, which votes only against about 15 or 16%, is way out of line in what's going on there. So I would suggest as part of increasing returns, de-risking, that we have a more aggressive policy to tell these boards that if they can't do their job, we're not going to re-elect them, and the CEO needs to, take his hand out of the till. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next. If you would indicate your name and organization, and you have 3 minutes to speak, and the time is right here.
So my name is Lisa Fine, and I'm a Vegas shooting survivor, and I support the treasurer's opinion and views. I was in the front row in VIP section when the war zone opened up. I have founded a nonprofit organization called Route 91 Strong, and our main focus is to help the victims and survivors of that horrible tragedy. I went to a concert, and automatic weapons were used to try to kill myself and 22,000 people. I'm very emotional right now, and I apologize. I've never done anything like this, but what I do stand for is for these victims that are being murdered. We have voted on having 2 new board members come on to Route 91 Strong, one being the Parkland shooting survivor, Thomas Holgate. Also, another survivor from Washington, D.C. that was a victim of gun violence. Something has got to change, and I see there is a big shift happening. And I'm just a girl that went to a concert that somebody tried to murder myself, and I watched and listened to people die. It was the worst thing I've ever experienced, and we are all vulnerable. We have to be vigilant. We cannot be complacent, and I am here to take that stand. If anybody would like to help us with Route91Strong.org, any way you can to help these victims and survivors get through the worst horrific tragedies of their lives. We are helping other victims and survivors of tragedies, including Parkland and in Texas. I mean, we need to be safe in our schools, our churches, concerts, movie theaters. We need to feel safe, and that's why I'm here. And I'm finished. Thank you so much for listening, and sorry about being so nervous. It's been an emotional roller coaster. It's been 5 months, and I just want to be a voice for those that don't have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the speakers list that we have, and so, Mr. Chung, did you want to make any closing comments?
Yeah, turn them on.
I shared earlier my request.
Okay. So is that a by motion, or are you just requesting?
I'm requesting the chair to set that on the agenda.
Okay. So the chair is ruling that we have already a schedule of divestment policy coming up early part of next year, and so that will give staff additional time to complete this process that they're already in. So unless there's a motion to overrule that decision, that's my direction.
I'd like to have
Wait. Okay, there you go.
I'd like to get a sense of the board.
So if you want to make a motion, need a second. So it's been moved by Mr. Chung to have a discussion on this item, divestment on guns in April. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Fechner. Discussion. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. I agree. I think that we can discuss this. I'm not sure that I agree with the treasurer's idea, but I haven't fully looked at it. But I do want to thank everybody for testifying today, and I can't even imagine what all of you have gone through. And the activism that you are currently showing and turning your grief and your anger into this energy is admirable. I also wanted to thank the staff for really reaching out to who we are invested with to engage with them. I think I said this earlier, to make sure that we got them to answer to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas request, which was the 4 items, which is no longer selling assault-style weapons, no longer selling firearms to anyone under the age of 21, no longer selling high-capacity magazines, and never selling bump stocks. And I think it's amazing that we have gotten all 4 of these large corporations to agree to all of this. And in addition to that, Dick's has agreed to be an advocate against gun violence and calling on policymakers to issue regulations to ban assault-style firearms. So with all of you and all of them, large corporations working together, maybe we will finally get some movement at the federal legislative level. I will also say that I think that it's important that we have engaged and accomplished this, but we didn't do this alone. I think all of your activism with us engaging with the companies that we own it enabled us to accomplish this, and I want to thank you all for your activism. I don't think we would have gotten it done otherwise. I also want to say that I look forward to the activism as it continues, and I look forward to a conversation on this. But I want to also say that I think that CalPERS has done a really good job of engagement and getting where we needed to be. So therefore, I think that it's not entirely necessary for us to divest. I don't have a problem with the conversation if we want to have the conversation at a later date. But if we are acting responsibly, and as we always do, we do have a divestment policy that states that we generally don't divest. And if we are divesting, we lose our seat at the table. So we wouldn't have been able to get Dick's or Walmart or any of the other companies to engage with us if we no longer own those stocks. So I just wanted to make sure that folks understand that our divestment policy is pretty clear, but also we have engaged and it has worked. So, and again, thank you all for coming. I know this has to be really hard. I'm a mother of 2 children. My kids are old enough that they didn't have to go through this, but thank you very much.
Mr. Chung, I just want to be sure that your request is to bring a report in to divest, not to have additional discussion. Is that correct? Okay. In the second of the motion, you concur with that? You still second that, Mr. Fechner? Okay. Okay, so I just want to be sure we're talking about bringing a report to divest next month. Okay. Mr. Gillihan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted clarification before we take a vote on the treasurer's motion as to what was the specifics of your direction to staff absent this motion?
Because it's already on our annual calendar to review our whole divestment policy in an upcoming meeting. And so guns will be part. Mr. Eliopoulos.
Yeah, what's the timing of that, though, I guess is what I'm trying to understand.
The timing of that.
Yeah, in our divestment policy, we've set up time periods for review of existing divestments. If you remember, we reviewed tobacco divestment last year. Later this year, we're scheduled to review our Iran-Sudan divestments. And then next year, we're slated to review the gun divestment policy. So it would be at that time we could take up not only existing divestments, but whether or not to apply it to retailers as well as manufacturers. I think that's what the chair was
Okay,
referring
thank
to.
you. Mr. Slayton. Oh, did that answer your question? I'm sorry. Okay, Mr. Slayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank the people who have come here to speak today, the strength you've shown at being willing to come before us and be here with us. Says a lot about your character, and we appreciate every comment that was made. My takeaway from some of the comments, somebody said that we're all culpable, which is true. Somebody else said we have to have change. That is also true. Bill Durston talked about some of the statistics. We obviously have a significant problem in this country. We are 4.4% of the world's population, and in private hands, almost 50% of the guns in the world are owned by citizens in the United States. We are 10 times more likely to be killed by a gun than the average of other developed countries. And by the way, the problem is not only with assault weapons, it's with handguns as well, as we all know. So we have to address this. And I know that there's a tremendous effort going on right now, and you are all part of this effort to address this on the political stage. We have an election coming up in 2018. We have another election in 2020, and we have the ability in this country to elect people to represent us at the federal level who can change the gun laws in this country and implement an assault weapon ban, along with some of the other bans that need to occur. So those gun laws can happen if we are able to change our political culture. And personally, I hope that assault weapons get reclassified and are not classified as a rifle. These are not rifles, these are weapons of war. The question now before us is, what can CalPERS do? And we know what the outcome that we want, which is a reduction in gun violence and a reduction in access to weapons. So that's the outcome we're trying to get to. The question is, what's the means to get to the outcome? And we have before us two choices. One is divestiture, and the other one is engagement. And we have found that engagement is a better alternative for us to be able to accomplish something in this arena. And the statistics that we have just from the recent engagement of Big Five sporting goods, they're discontinuing the sale of assault weapons. Dick's Sporting Goods discontinuing the sale of assault weapons. Kroger Company, they're reviewing the policy on assault weapons and announced on March 1st no longer sell any of the stores or even accept special orders. Walmart not only has a decision about assault weapons, but they do not sell any handguns in the continental United States. So the movement, it's happening. And while I appreciate you coming to us, we then have to make a decision, what's the most effective thing that we can do, because we have exactly the same mission that you have in regard to the issue of guns. And so while I appreciate the Treasurer's objective to accomplish here, and certainly if the motion passes, then we can have an engagement on this topic. But I think our best effort, as it is with many other areas, is to continue engagement to change behavior. Thank you.
So I don't disagree with many of the points made here, but I think we need a complete picture, right? So first of all, we're trying to maximize risk-adjusted return, right? Nowhere in this conversation, people talking about optimizing return have we talked about managing the risk, right? We subject ourselves to extraordinary liability, and we've seen what happens when we didn't appropriately take action based on risk. Secondly, the very point of engagement, and I strongly support engagement, is that you have to make sure that you're going to follow up on the engagement, failure to act on the engagement, right? If we don't take action here, nobody's going to take us seriously on engagement, right? Yes, we've been successful because if you have the threat of divesting and people who don't act upon, or we don't act upon, as the largest public pension plan in the United States of America, right? And we say we're going to engage and we're going to engage. We can engage from here to kingdom come and get nothing done if they know that this board on critical issues, right? And I'm not saying on every single issue, but we're going to have to say we're going to stand and divest from certain things that are absolutely critical that don't meet our fiduciary obligation. So not to even have this conversation, to look at how it impacts risk-adjusted return, not to fully explore, right? We took some promises from these companies, but if they know we're not going to have any teeth to our action, how do we know that they're going to fulfill on the words that they promised to this board and to others? And so I think that's why we need to take this next step so that we can make sure that people take the actions of us seriously. And so I don't know why we wouldn't want to engage in this conversation.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. In discussion, there's no additional request to speak. So,
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes.
If I could, just on the timing of bringing back the item in April, I can't assure you that we'd be able to complete the analysis that would be required, by next month. The agenda items are due in just 2 weeks. So aside from all the substantive issues that the committee has so well debated, I think the timing of having an analysis in front of you, I just want to make sure the committee's aware that we'll be time constrained in the types of analysis we could bring back on such short notice.
Okay, thank you. That's an important piece of information. Okay, so I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Okay, maybe we better do a roll call. Roll call, please. The motion fails. Okay. We will now return to the rest of the items. Well, we have to take a break in about 6 minutes. So now would be a good time to break for lunch, and then we will come back and reconvene and take care of the rest of the items in 6B. Okay? Thank you. Okay. Good job. Okay, thanks.